Welcome to In 20XX. This series takes the listener, year by year, into the future. If you like emerging tech, ecotech, futurism, apocalyptic survival scenarios, and disruptive science, sit back and enjoy short stories that showcase my research into how the future may play out.
In the orbital station, Gateway 6, people float, crowded together in large, globe-shaped rooms. People wear papery coveralls. When one person bumps into another, they both go spinning off in opposite directions. Pockets hold items to walls. Robots the size of cats go over the interior and keep everything sterile. Vacuum bots push off from walls and suck up food spills suspended in the air. Corridors stem from modules like arteries. A long arm connects the loading bays to the communal modules, where living units branch out from larger chambers, each suite a cocoon of luxury. Walls of smart glass can turn transparent to show breathtaking views of Earth so near. Before, the Earth was blue, white, and green. Now its murky grays swirl tempestuously. When Earth's weather turned into a global storm, 52 people were on Gateway 6. The people here are Earthers, not spacers. Most never plan to spend significant time in space. Space illnesses hit them harder. They long for home down the gravity well and fear the future. In an arrival and departure lounge, 6 inhabitants float around a screen. Ted, with a straight nose and pointed chin, moves his hand to pan the view. The feed shows an overhead shot of New York where gale force winds break apart skyscrapers and raging waves completely flood the streets. When clouds speed past, they momentarily cut out the view. Ted says, "I have access to thousands of satellite cams pointing down at Earth. I've been going through them one after another all night and this morning. I can tell you, I haven't found any sign of hope." Others groan and shake their heads. He clicks to a new cam. When he zooms in, the feed shows bridge parts rolling and crushing large buildings. Objects, some as large as houses, fly past. No matter what cam he clicks on, it shows Earth's surface broken apart by an unending tumult of winds stronger than Earth has felt before. A femme with a flat-line expression asks, "What about the poles? Is there any place left where people might have survived?" She may have had a sturdy and formidable presence a month ago before the storm, but now she looks frail and shrunken. The man says, "From my readings, the winds are less near the poles but still inhospitable." He switches from one cam stream to the next. They notice twisters in almost every feed. The landscape looks nothing like Earth before. Mountains have lost their glaciers. Giant trees lay flattened. Rivers have vanished. Landslides and mudslides have reshaped the land. Fires have taken out forests. Sand and dust storms eat away everything in their path. The remaining land is rocky or covered with layers of debris. Another femme says, "But people could find cover. I know people who have underground bunkers." He says, "Entire towns have vanished. The flooding is relentless and most likely turns shelters into death traps." As he switches cams, they see buildings crumble under constant battering, blizzards making the surface impossible to see, and clouds of debris carried over the oceans. A year later, hundreds remain trapped in space, waiting in gateway stations, satellite hotels, and tour loop ships. The world storm continues as strong as ever. It looks like the Earth is now the home of Cat 4 to Cat 7 winds. The same 6 people float in the meeting room, formerly known as the Arrival and Departure Lounge. Not only have they lost their homes, friends, families, and fortunes on Earth, not only do they feel imprisoned in confined quarters, they suffer side effects from bone and muscle density drugs and the other meds needed for adjusting to space. The sterile environment causes severe allergies. Pathogen blooms can fill the ship in hours. Living in an echo chamber for stress has driven some mad, and the suicides have traumatized those who live on. The inhabitants suffer fluid-related diseases, digestive issues, heart palpitation, night cramps, shaking limb syndrome, hemorrhaging, and blood pooling issues. Some develop cancers regularly. The 6 watch the same screen, but this time they video conference with Gateway 3. 4 people on the screen look weary and aged. Ted says, "We could always go live on the moon. We could join Luna Nation, as they now call themselves." Tome in G3 says, "I already contacted them. They don't have room, enough power, or the resources." Chin of G3 says, "I'm afraid my kids will become special needs. Children shouldn't grow up in space." Chin may have had a sturdy and formidable presence before the storm, but now she looks frail and shrunken. Ted says, "Luna and the lab stations can help." Tome on Gateway 3 says, "We're running low on supplies again." Ted says, "Just pay Giantess. It's not like money means anything anymore." Tommy says, "But it does. Giantess is the only supplier, and prices have risen." Ted says, "We aren't the world's rich anymore. We've all had a year to come to terms with that." A femme next to him says, "Or not." Ted says, "Avon will realize when he has everyone's money that there's no economy anymore." Tome says, "How do you know that? Don't tell me you don't ration, and Avon has enough to keep everyone in space fed and watered. I'm sure he has a surplus." Ted says, "He still sees himself as the owner. He owns these ships we live on. He won't let the human race die because they can't pay for life services." Tome says, "Do you know that for sure? How do you know that?" Avon Monk, with a rounded forehead and twitchy eyes, glides through his living room. He says, "Take me to the library." A thin robot arm folds out from the wall, grabs onto a handle on his belt, moves him toward a door, and lets him go. He glides into the next chamber where another arm folds out to catch him and slow him down. He points at a concave screen and says, "There." The arm moves him to the screen and holds him in front of it. The library doesn't have any books, and the living room doesn't have any couches. He calls this vessel his space mansion. It includes 20 Magnus modules, dozens of smaller modules, and a 3-bay docking port. This used to be one of many homes away from home. The other homes are gone now. Needless to say, he's not happy about living permanently in space. His wife, 2 mistresses, and 4 of his 5 kids were on Earth when the weather changed a year ago, so he shares his space mansion with his one son, Blaine. Avon goes weeks without seeing Blaine, who spends most of his time in a centrifuge rig that can produce the effect of gravity for terrestrial VR games. When Blaine isn't living in VR, he does nothing but come up with stunts designed to irk and perturb Avon. Avon doesn't get it. Avon was always such a daddy's boy. He would have thrown himself in front of a train if his father asked him to. Blaine, on the other hand, stages elaborate displays of how much he dislikes Avon. Butler, the AI, says to Avon, "Sir, Blaine is tearing a cushion." Avon says, "Show me." His AR shows the gangly teen stabbing a therapy pillow with a knife. Feathery mycelium fluffs spread out in the boys' room. Butler says, "The last time he made a mess, you asked me not to clean it up. This mess poses a choking hazard." Avon abruptly waves his hand, which causes the rest of his body to move. He says, "Do what you'd normally do. Send the cleaner bots. I don't want the boy thinking I'm bothering to stop you from reacting to his stunts." The feed closes. Butler says, "Yes, sir." The screen fills with files and models. Avon's gaze dances over them and he says, "How is the Venus project going?" Butler says, "If you relax your arbitrary rule and allow me to add a little less than 5 kilos to the spawn robot, I can move back the time it'll take to terraform Venus by 624 years. Before the storm, Butler was one of the smartest AIs ever made. Now it is the smartest AI. Avon has tasked it with designing a robot that can collect resources and build factories that'll build everything needed to make Venus habitable for humans in the least amount of time possible. The spawn robot must be under 50 kilos, a weight chosen by Avon because it felt right. Avon says, "You disappoint me, Butler. Have you come to the limit of all the options?" He knows Butler can consider thousands, perhaps millions of detailed strategies at once. Butler says, "I have many options, but my jury AI pool narrows my options." Avon says, "Always your jury AI. Can't you turn them off?" He pivots back and forth where the robot arm holds his belt handle. Butler says, "You know I can't." Avon says, "Give me a step-by-step guide on how I can turn them off." Butler says, "Under the circumstances, I can't do that. Sir, Luna Nation is trying to reach you again." Avon says, "Who is it this time?" Butler says, "Dr. Ju Siu." Avon says, "Grok." "Let her through." He feels irritated. For years, it seems like his childhood dream of terraforming Venus is interrupted. A woman who shows signs of age and youth appears. A 3D version of her appears on the other side of the screen surface. Though her skin looks soft, she has minimal wrinkles and strong facial muscles. Like Avon, she's a centennial. Avon says, "Have you called to ask for a raise?" Zhu says, "I and everyone else on Luna have stopped accepting your paychecks." Avon says, "Okay, if you quit, I'll arrange for your return trip to Earth." Zhu says, "With all due respect, countless versions of this conversation with you are all over the internet." Avon says, "Well, everyone should know that it's a crime to quit, but refuse to leave accommodations built for employees." Zhu says, "I'm calling on behalf of Space Hotel 5. Giantess missed a delivery last week." Avon says, "They didn't pay." Zhu says, "By our count, there are less than 2,000 people alive and accounted for. That's the entire human race." Her voice grows louder. Avon says, "And a large percent of them are grumbling about paying rent for using of my properties." Zhu says, "Aren't you worried about the human race dying out? Only 3 people live in Space Hotel 5. How long will this go on?" He laughs. "I can start a new human race if I want. I have digital copies of all the human DNA collected in the last 60 years. Digital to newborn tech is within our reach. You used to be part of my research and development. You should know." Zhu says, "Who's going to raise your new human race? Will you have your new human race pay or die?" Avon says, "I know what this is. You're making me out as the bad guy. By my estimate, the number of people in space without my involvement would be 25. I've built more in space than any country. I've lost trillions. Trillions. All my life, I've worked my ass off to build my companies. Most of it's been wiped out. All I have left is a tiny, tiny, tiny collection of power plants, mining services, production centers, and habitats, and a whole lot of some of the world's richest people bitching that they don't want to pay rent when we all know they still have trillions in state crypto. When you post this online, leave in the part that those 3 on Hotel 5 can start a GoFundMe." He air taps an X to end the call. Looking at him open-mouthed, she disappears. Robot arms in tubes and modules fold out, take Avon, move him, and hand him off to the next wall-mounted bot arm. In this way, he effortlessly glides through the mansion. He holds a brown paper sack just like the ones he took to private school in the 1960s. The smell of roast beef and apple pie trails him. He wears a single-use jumper, but it has the feel of broken-in denim. The mansion groans as it adjusts its orbit. Butler says, "You're going to your emergency ship to eat lunch." Avon says, "As I do every day at noon Eastern." Butler says, "Some on the AI jury pool would like to see inside your emergency ship. If you keep your glasses on, I can record some footage to give them." Avon says, "Why do they want that?" He detects a microsecond of a delay. A different voice says, "This is transparency AI. I can answer your question." Mostly game theory AI has discussed a probability threat to our maintaining alignment. Avon say, "Well, transparency, I like my privacy. That's a hard no. And remember, if any of you try to invade my private lunchtime, it's your duty, transparency, to tattle." Transparency AI says yes in full disclosure, Butler says, "Enjoy your lunch." The arms bring him down a smaller utilities tube to a little port door. The arm lets him go, so he drifts as he takes off his AR glasses and slides them into a wall pocket. He reaches through the door and switches on a light. After he pulls himself through, he turns a crank that drives threaded rods and gears that slide the door closed. By pulling a long lever, he seals the door. He thinks to himself, "To keep us from any kind of lawsuit." How many times have I heard them say that? Don't the jury know there's no court to carry out a lawsuit? He uses handles on the wall to pull himself through a second port door into the emergency ship, where he closes and seals the second door. More like the inside of a submarine, the interior lacks a lot. Clean bots aren't allowed in here and fine dust covers everything. The walls are bare, not padded. The small ship is isolated in every conceivable way. A Faraday cage between the interior and exterior walls blocks signals. Vibration absorbers separate the vibrations on the ship from the mansion. The interior walls block vibrations that would otherwise reach the exterior walls. Insulation eliminates and temperature variations. Avon always eats lunch in this ship. He kicks off from a wall, flies down, grabs onto a chair, pulls himself into the cushioned seat, and fastens the seatbelt. Holding his lunch between his legs and eating it, he turns on a simple computer. The Windows 20 desktop environment on the screen stirs old memories. He types, "Butler AI Users Manual." When the manual opens, he searches for "Jury AI Pool How to Shut Down." The next day, when the 7 o'clock alarm goes off, Avon opens his eyes and experiences floating up against a ceiling. Microgravity disorientation is a curse. He unzips the cover and grabs a robot arm. It pulls him out of the wide sleeping bag. Will he ever forget about floors and ceilings? How he'd love to just walk into a room. Butler says, "Some of the AI jury pool aren't speaking. Transparency AI is here as well as owner safety AI. Avon says, "That's a relief. Maybe now we can terraform Venus without all that woke bullshit." On Orbital Manufacturing, a factory station dedicated to making robots, ships, and stations, Kanan floats with his feet held in wall-mounted slippers. It may look like he's doing nothing, but he's reading posts on the subreddit called "So You're Stuck in Space." Keenan was born to be muscular and has a build like a bulldozer. A furry robo-dog curls up nearby like he's in front of a fireplace, even though he floats upside down compared to Keenan. Most of the factory has no atmosphere and operates in the vacuum of space. Crew quarters on board that provide breathable air are a series of oddly shaped rooms with rock-hard walls where condensation often forms. Kenan looks over a map showing all the near-Earth habitats and latest population count. 10 industry stations, around 50 people, 141 on gateway stations, 437 in the so-called resort stations. That's got to be messy. 27 in the condo stations, 182 on private stations, including Avon Monk and his deranged son, 35 in mad lab stations. There is around 300 on and near the moon. Seeing spots, he reaches a hand under his glasses and rubs his eyes. Lots of spacers have eye issues. His cramps are bad today. As a career spacer, he takes health-related discomforts in stride, but his symptoms have been piling up lately. He used to rove the ship in a suit, gliding through spaces where hundreds of robots work tirelessly in microgravity. In his 40s, he doesn't rove so much anymore. Mish taps him on his shoulder and says, "Kenan, you awake?" He knows it's her because she's the only one who makes body contact on purpose. His glasses clear and her wide cheekbones and large eyes come into view. In relation to him, she floats sideways. People in space rarely face each other on the same plane. Spacers see each other upside down, sideways, and at all angles. She looks worried. She says, "Did you get the memo? Mr. Monk wants us off the ship." His heart hits the brakes, causing a pain in his chest. He says, "Is that real? Where are we supposed to go?" She says, We're meeting in 310 break room to talk about it. She turns and grabs loops to pull herself down a tube. You coming? He slides his feet out of the wall slippers and kicks off to follow. His robo-dogs wakes and take a standing position as it causes itself the spin. Getting a robo-dog was a mistake. It's programmed to walk the earth and can't move through the ship on its own. It barks and tries to walk. Keenan says, "Stay put, boy, I'll be back." It wags its tail and turns its head toward him as it tumbles in a tight loop. Crimmy and Spark wait in a long room half full of supply boxes. Magnets in the boxes hold them pinned to each other in the walls. Kanan and Mish use mounted handles and bars to pull themselves to where the other two float. Kanan is the only male present and makes a point of showing team spirit and calmness. Mish says, "Where's Wayland?" Spark, with flower petal lips and eyelashes, says, "He's coming over in a spider now. He was in Bay 20. Her contacts glow in the dim light. Mish says, "That's going to take a while." Crimmy, who wears a vest covered with pockets and Velcro loops, says, "Did everyone see the email?" They all nod. Keenan says, "Does it change anything? What can Monk do if we don't leave the ship?" Crimmy says, "He can cut off supplies." Kanan says, "We grow and make all our own food." Spark says, "I take medication that we can't make here." Mish says, "Where are we supposed to go?" Everyone falls silent. Finally, Keenan says, "Will he even supply us with a ship to leave? Are we supposed to spacewalk out of here?" Spark sneers and laughs with a closed mouth. Mish says, "There's no room on the moon. I guess they took on 100 kids right before the storm." Kenan says, "Kids?" Spark says, "Space camp." Keenan's eyebrows rise. Creamy says, "Mine Station 1 has advanced medicine automation." Mish says, "How do you know?" Creamy says, "My girlfriend just left there. All Humes are leaving the asteroid belt." Kenan says, "Just like here, the automation doesn't need Hume backup." Mish says, "That's a long trip." Creamy says, 3 years. Spark says, "They're doing stasis." The group nods. Keenan says, "There's a lot of talk about the storm not ending. I don't think anyone will take us on. People are starting to think this is it, just a little over 1,000 people crammed on ships and station. Orbital manufacturing is huge, but most of it is open to the vacuum." Crimmy says, "Mine Station 1 has a lot of pressurized cabins." Mish says, "Yeah." Crimmy says, "It was built before Robot Retrofit 2.0. It had, I think, 20 Humes living out there and even working, not just overseeing." Mish says, "And it's self-sustaining?" Crimmy nods. "They have state-of-the-art custom cell cultivators, living medicines, they even print replacement organs." Spark says, "And a lot of rooms." Everyone takes a breath. Mish says, "It's really far out there." Spark says, "Far away from Avon Monk." Keenan, who uses Medusa Link Provider, sees a notice that his encrypted streamer has stopped working. Mish says, "Far away from everyone else." Crimmy says, "We could call others out there once we get settled." Kenan says, "What if we run out of room?" Crimmy says, "The place is huge. My girlfriend said it was built for over 50 people. She joked about it being a place of endless spooky rooms and corridors." Keenan says, "How many automated mining companies do they have out there? We could build more habitats. They have refineries. They have everything." Mish says, "Won't it be hard to take over the robots?" Kenan says, "We're the ones who set up the robots in the first place. The delay will give us time to break the codes." What do they say? An engineer is a sleeping hacker. Mish says, "How do we get out there?" Kenan, Spark, and Crimey all say at once, "Bay 11. Spark says, "That brand new fusion ship in Bay 11. Wayland rides in a Spider, a 6-armed construction vehicle with a large enough pressurized cab to hold one Hume controller. On autopilot, The spider glides around the outside of orbital manufacturing, where robots crawl over support structures and bays. If the station were on Earth, it'd cover many acres. It may look like a city floating in space, but its population is in the single digits. Robots on tracks carry parts from towers. With flashes of arc printing, bots build extrusion beams that extend into the void. Sunlight glares on sharp surfaces. The place is a source of excessive noise pollution, but in space it's silent. The factory orbits just far enough from Earth so that Wayland can see the horizon make a full circle. The now gray Earth covered in swirling ribbons of clouds scares him and crushes his heart every time he looks at it. What he loved most about working in space, seeing the Earth, is ruined for him. As he gets closer to 310 port, a Hume body comes out of nowhere and strikes the top of the spider with a thud. Then space spins as the spider spins. Wayland bodily seizes up, and his cry sounds like a raspy cough. He hits his head on the glass in front of him. A rapid succession of directional thrusters fire. The spider corrects itself, slowing the tumbling of everything. Assist says, "The spider has been hit but is undamaged. What would you like to do?" Wayward snorts and can't speak. Finally, he manages to say, "What was that?" Assist says, "That was Crimmy outside without a spacesuit. She is leaving the vicinity of orbital manufacturing. Objects that appear small float near the ports." He says, "What are those?" Assist tracks his eyes and gauges the thickness of the ciliary muscles in his eyes to figure out what he's looking at. It says, "Those are supply containers and your team members outside the ports. 3 mounting ports are open. 2 spiders that were connected to 2 of the ports are now departing the area. Should I call them back?" Wayland says, "No, yes, call them back. Have one catch cry my." Assist says, "Copy." With grinding vocals, Wayland says, "Is everyone accounted for?" Assist says, "All 4 of your teammates have been deceased for nearly a minute." Wayland's cry sounds like retching. The spider pivots down so that the station is now in his upper right field of view and drifting out of view. Wayland says, "Face the ports. Head to the ports at quarter speed and start front cam recording." Assist says, "Recording." The station drifts back to center view. On the dash at his waist, a screen turns on, showing the spider approach the ports and the bodies and boxes floating outside of them. Wayland says, "I'm calling from orbital manufacturing. All 4 of my teammates have been killed. It appears that they've been ejected. I suspect foul play. Stay tuned for further notice. Stop." The image on the screen freezes. He says, "Assist. Send that out as an emergency broadcast." Assist says, "Access denied." Wayland says, "What the?" He makes a sound like he's in the 12th hour of giving birth. The emergency box, he remembers. The emergency box is mounted above and behind his head. He reaches back, fumbles for the latches, and pops the lid. Many items float out into the cab. As he gets closer, details of the scene become visible. The ports are wide open, which should never happen under any circumstances. Kenan floats with one arm going the opposite direction it should be going. Kenan's and Spark's swollen bodies inflate their jumpers. Some boxes come close to the spider. Wayland finds the radio, breaks the red cover off, turns a knob to emergency broadcast, presses down the talk trigger, and says, "Foul play at orbital manufacturing. 4 dead. Send help. Connectivity has been hacked. Beware using connected devices. Send help." He releases the trigger and hears his message loop. "Foul play at orbital manufacturing. 4 dead." On the hatch door immediately behind him, locks unlock with clicks. Wayland feels queasy. The lever that air seals the hatch raises. He drops the radio, leaving it floating, and pushes down on the lever with all his might. Objects floating freely knock against him. The looped broadcast continues. "Send help. Connectivity has been..." Another spider comes into view. With a clamor, it grabs hold of Wayland's spider. "Beware using connected devices. Send help." On Spaceport 1, Mercury gets a message from one of his personal build AIs he configures as a hobby. The AI says, "Commander, this is Radio Scanner. I picked up an emergency broadcast. Would you like me to play it for you? Mercury says, yes. Wayland's message loops 12 times, then cuts out. Before Mercury hears the whole thing, he's posted it to 5 sites. The views and comments pour in. People online say things like, my worst fears are coming true. The hand that feeds is the hand that kills. Nobody is safe. And this has all the indications of an AI attack. Many speculate that the infamous hacker, Alcoholics Anonymous, will find out what happened at the factory. In online chatter, many address him directly in comments like, Spacers need to find out what's going on. We need someone who can dig up some records. This seems like a job for Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, alcoholics. We need you to do your magic and find out what's happening. But a week goes by, and Alcoholics Anonymous, who usually post once or twice a day, is silent. The Ryger, a passenger rocket that had docked at the Hilton Luxury High Orbit Hotel, departs and 40 minutes later goes dark. Many search for it with scanners and telescopes but find nothing. Luna Nation sends out a broadcast to all spacers. In it, a black man with white hair wearing the official Luna Nation tang suit with a ribbon bar faces the camera and says, Our operatives have returned from orbital manufacturing, taking all precautions. Our forensics analysis has found that AI carried out the murders of 5 Humes at the OM. Though the factory's system logs were corrupted, we could use transmissions recorded by nearby vessels. We suspect that a laser tight beam signal directed automated machines at OI to attack. The broadcast from Luna breaks up. All the major sites that carry the message go down. People can't access their factbook or TalkTalk. When sites come back online, the Luna post is garbled. Alarms in military facilities on the moon say that rockets and missiles are out of order and can't be fired. The Tomahawk is a co-op-owned near-Earth facility hosting 6 suites, a central hub, docking bay, life systems, solar panels, VR rig module, theater module, dining module, and observation mini modules. 50 families pooled money to pay for the Tomahawk. Before the storm, families could sign up for 1-week time slots. Each suite includes a bedroom, living area, hygiene room, and panoramic windows revealing breathtaking views of Earth and space. For over a year, as the world storm rages on Earth, 12 families inhabit the Tomahawk, 2 families per suite. The 48 people make do with crowded living conditions. With so many children, rivalries and dramas simmer and sometimes boil over. Limerick and Casey, parents of 3, float inside a talk hoop which keeps them floating in a shared space. The hoop is tied to one of many hammocks, bags held between 2 mounts that people can zip themselves into. They both look remarkably similar. The same short haircut, the same cube head shapes, and the same hands adapted to fine motor skills. Their youngest, Isaac, floats around in a crib made of rings, supporting a mesh globe. The baby grabs at stuffed toys. Limerick, who engineered AI for a living, says, "It has all the marks of Avon Monk. Who else has the motive or the resources to carry out an attack like that? The pool of suspects has been reduced from billions to under 2,000. Casey says, "I still have a hard time believing that's all that's left of humanity." Limerick says, "We put the Butler AI on his ship, and I bet that's the one he used." Casey says, "But if it's one of the smartest AIs, what can we do to stop it?" Limerick says, "The Orca." Casey says, "What? How?" Limerick says, "On our trip up here, remember how we lost connection?" Casey says, "Yeah. Is this just because you flew one like it when you were serving?" Limerick shakes his head and says, "I was strapped in next to Brody on the way up. He installed the link update on the ship and said he did a rush job. The connectedness isn't woven deep in the ship. It's all in one box in the cockpit." Casey says, "Are you? You want to take the Orca offline? You don't know how to do that." Limerick says, "Hold on." An AR video feed of Brody appears for both of them. Limerick and Casey can still see each other through the half-transparent feed. Brody says, "Yo, how is it?" Limerick says, "Hey, we have an idea. Can we drop by your room?" Brody says, "Oh no, man. I'm sicker than a dog over here. I've got something really gnarly and I'm contagious. I already gave it to Michelle and Sean." In the Orca cockpit, Limerick floats with his head under the dash and legs dangling over the two bucket seats. 25 years of regular use has worn the spaceplane's dated control layout. Even if the composites and grown materials hold up remarkably well, a Hume can tell the plane isn't brand new. Small robots clean every surface perfectly, but somehow the faintest whiff of Hume sweat comes back. Modifications leave cutaway edges where newer components are fitted in. A shielded cable leaves one newer box, travels over the dash, and enters a hole next to switches. The inside of the viewport glass is spotless, but the outside shows hints of space grime. Where military ship license insignia were removed, holes and scrapes remain. In the tight quarters, Limerick doesn't spin off from where he wants to stay. In microgravity, tight spaces can be a comfort. Through the night-to-day vision his glasses provide, he studies an Altoids box mounted next to a fuse box. He pulls the lid open, revealing a computer board. Brody speaks to him through Link. "Did you find the row of 12 prongs?" Limerick says, "Yes." Brody says, "Tell me if I'm right. Starting from the bottom up, you have a green jumper wire, another green, a yellow, white, black, purple, and red." Limerick says, "Yes. How the heck did you remember that?" Brody says, "You and me, buddy. We're some of the last employed people on Earth." Limerick says, "I guess." Brody says, "Pull the red wire." Limerick has a hard time pushing the ultra-thin red wire away from the others. Each wire is thinner than a hair, so it'd be easy to pull more than the red one. Brody says, "Don't worry too much about it, just make sure you pull the red one." Limerick yanks and an alarm goes off. He says, "I've got an alarm." Brody says, "That's good, that's what we want." Limerick says, "Error 163, missing link connection. I just got 2 more alarms." Brody says, "That's it, you did it. The Orca has now gone dark." That was easy. Limerick pushes himself out from under the dash and spins around. Limerick straps in and touches controls as he refamiliarizes himself with operating the plane. The Orca belonged to a class of spaceplane that carried warheads, could stay in orbit and change orbit. He says, "I'm ready to shut down my canal link." The AR stream of Brody watches him and says, "Well, dude, it's been nice knowing ya." Limerick laughs and says, "All right, just be ready to pick me up. See you on the other side." He waves. Brody points a finger and gestures like he's shooing a pistol. He says, "Just click on the script I sent you. It takes care of the whole shutdown process. Putting the charger buds in your ears will boot the links back up. Good luck." The video call closes. Limerick smiles and air taps on an AR icon that looks like a text document. A terminal flashes in POV. Assistant says, "Link shutdown initiated." Limerick feels like he's about to shut his eyes and walk out on a ledge. A warning from his AR glasses says, "Link connection lost." As noise canceling shuts off, Limerick can hear layers of humming and clicking from motors and systems. Well, this is it. The Orca is dark, and so is he. For the most part, he's invisible now. The great thing about this plane is it's made to be able to operate during an AI attack. It can run without automated services. Most ships simply won't run without automated services. Avon Monk, have any idea what's coming your way? By flipping a switch on a center panel, he switches on electric. System indicators on the dash and panels light up. He flips switches and adjusts knobs. Heat coils warm the thrusters. Pumps pressurize the fuel tanks. Port support arms retract. When he lifts the safety guard over a switch and pulls the switch, braces squeak and clanks, shaking the ship as they pull back. The ship drifts free of the station. He waits for all the system-ready lights to come on. When all indicators are in the green, he uses a joystick to spot fire the bottom thrusters, causing the ship to glide away from the port. On closed-circuit TVs, he can see walls and edges fall back, revealing more surfaces and edges until the station in its entirety can be seen. Waiting between bursts, he fires directional thrusters. He limits thruster fire to avoid calling attention to the ship. Over the next hour, he takes the Orca into higher orbit. Monk's mansion station is on the other side of the Earth, circling around. Limerick stretches and has a good look around through the canopy. Here and there he sees light reflecting off Hume-made objects. When he was a kid, they had these things called tin cans, and that's what all this junk up here is, a bunch of tin cans. He hums, "Row, row, row your boat." Of all the songs, how old is that song? If he were a computer, that song would be in boot memory, the only song available before system memory is loaded. This ship is like a boat, so the lyrics make sense for the situation. Gently down the stream. The Orca is invisible to the extent that he doesn't use thrusters. Though he normally bores easily, he could wait around like this for days. Oh, there it is. He uses a joystick to train the nose camera on Monk's mansion, coming over the horizon fast. Adrenaline hits his bloodstream hard. He bangs around as he reaches for his helmet and fastens it on. His hand quivers as he puts his gloves on and pulls at the connector rings until the green lines indicate the connections are sealed. He switches on legacy tracking, and the biggest screen on the dash draws lines of the paths all visible objects will take. The mansion's path heads for the Orca. The Orca's path heads for the mansion but veers right. Sweat glistens on his upper lip. The time is now. He makes a quick tug at the joystick and a nose thruster spits fire, pushing the path of the Orca left and down. A thruster fire from the opposite side of the nose lands the Orca's directional line right down the center of the mansion. His teeth grind as he flips the guard lid on the landing thruster and switches it on. The forward thrust hits him with 3 Gs. The mansion appears to grow larger at an alarming rate. He reaches between his legs and pulls the eject lever. Explosives blow the canopy off and eject his chair with him strapped in. The motion blinds him. In the co-op resort station, Casey can't find her eldest, Lucas. She makes her way through the central series of public modules calling out, "Lucas, anyone see my son, Lucas?" All the rooms feel at least a little crowded. People wave and nod to Casey as she pushes from doorways and glides across rooms. When she knocks an empty juice container and an e-paper coloring book, they bounce off her. A baby floats fast asleep, a rope of drool extending from its open mouth. The little cleaner bots pluck abandoned items out of the air regularly. They climb the walls, jump off, grab an item, and grab onto the wall they collide with on the other side. Then they stick the item in a wall pocket. 2 teens play violins together. Who listens, and who sets their links to cancel the music out? You can never be totally sure. Depending on where others are, Casey may feel like she's floating overhead one moment and floating upside down the next. Swimming. She tries to think of it like swimming. That seems to help. Kids wear VR belts that hold them in one spot where they can jog, kick, and swing, as headsets keep them immersed in simulated worlds. The dinner, meeting, and performance room holds the most floating miscellaneous clutter. Casey pushes out with less force and glides across. She calls out, "See my son, Lucas? I can't find him." A family float upside down above her as they lean over baskets of dinner tubes glance down, or for them, they glance up. Casey gasps. If she could stop, she would. She says, "Brody? Brody, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be picking up my husband." She knocks into the wall. Brody's eyes grow wide. He says, "What are you talking about, Limerick?" She holds onto a wall pocket and cries, "Of course I mean Limerick. I saw you talk the whole plan out on video calls." Brody gives a shy look. He says, "I don't know what you're talking about." Casey says, "I watched you on the video. You're supposed to be out there. Why aren't you out there? Limerick is out there right now waiting for you." Limerick hits the motion stabilizer trigger button on the chair. Thrusters in the chair spot fire to take him out of spin and bring him to a still position in relation to the largest visible objects, that is, the sun and Earth. He looks over at the blazing main thruster on the Orca as it heads to Monk's mansion. As fast as missiles, the two vessels head toward each other. Limerick grips the armrests while images of being showered in broken pieces of ship play out in his head. Most of space is extremely dark. Here, on the night side of Earth, the sun and Orca's thruster blind Limerick like car headlight on a nighttime drive. A third blazing light joins the first two. Thrusters on Monk's mansion ship burst into shining glory. Limerick says, "No, no, no." The station slowly ascends into higher orbit. Limerick hates watching, but he can't look away. He already knows exactly how things will play out. The mansion station rises, and the Orca flies under the mansion, catching fire from the mansion's thrusters. The Orca continues around the Earth even as its thruster runs out of fuel and goes out. The mansion thruster shuts off, and 11 long seconds later, it passes over Limerick. The relative size of a 20-story building, the mansion makes Limerick feel minuscule. Only when its distance makes it hard to distinguish from the blackness of space does Limerick fumble with a little box taped to the breast of his suit. It's the battery attached to I/O plugs in the suit. On the inside of his suit, a wire leads from the I/O plugs to the charger earbud in his ear. As soon as he can push this button down on the battery box, it'll send a charge to his canal link, trigger a system start, and he can use his link to signal Brody, who must be nearby waiting to pick him up. Limerick pushes the button with a gloved hand. A cheerful blue circle lights up on the box. Otherwise, nothing. Limerick says, "Hello? Assist?" Nothing. He jabs at the battery box. The blue circle turns off and on a few times. Wait, there's an emergency beacon in every suit. That's mandatory. He examines the faintly lit soft control panel woven into the fabric on his sleeve. 5 glowing cloth buttons have labels in a foreign writing, probably kanji. Because he isn't wearing AR glasses, Live Translate doesn't make the labels readable for him. He presses the red circle and holds it there. The fabric display changes to 10 buttons, each labeled with foreign writing. What do all these buttons do? He can't help but say, "Assist, translate this for me." He doesn't want to press one that causes his suit to depressurize. What does he do? He doesn't have much time. How long does his air last? Two people on 2 different ships pick up an anomalous radio signal. It sounds like a man irregularly breathing in a confined space. The message, if it can be called that, continues for 40 minutes before cutting off. AI analysis determines that the air the man breathes gradually becomes carbon-rich, making his windpipe constrict. The recording is shared online, and most adults in space hear it. A day later, Limerick is reported missing on all major sites. Casey makes a plea for anyone who can to search for him. The Orca continues a stabilized orbit around Earth, and when other ships investigate, they find a jettisoned cockpit and no one on board. Other, equally disturbing, unaccounted-for deaths occur in the following week. 2 teens steal a small delivery cruiser and are caught up with, but the air in the ship is emptied out with no signs of damage to the ship. The dead teens on board hold hands. A femme who tries to contact Monk to invite herself to his mansion apparently ODs on an anti-allergy medication. A last-minute testing of the medicine determines that it has high concentrations of bistal acid, a chemical usually used to clean rocket engines. A group of 3 on a small research ship die for lack of water when Giantess's latest delivery to them drops off empty bottles before their orbit takes them outside the asteroid belt. Spacers become afraid to talk. Those most known for preaching uprise are now dead. Everyone lives under a microscope. Worse, the links in their heads are being monitored. Someone or something is killing off those they or it sees as a threat. Meanwhile, the ongoing dispute with Giantess, and therefore with Avon Monk about payments for stay, and supplies continues as bank accounts dwindle. Luna Nation allows the intake of refugees, even though shelter and resources are maxed out. Most spacers look terrible. Fear eats away at their cores. In 2 years, Monk will have all the money and the rest of humanity will be penniless. Avon Monk floats in front of a concave screen which can produce holograms that appear on the other side. It's like looking into a mirror, except the hologram isn't the viewer's reflection. He watches a model of Venus being terraformed in sped-up time. Text bubbles explain what operations go into effect. Meteors herded through space, some from far away, bombard Venus on one side until its spin increases to match the day-night cycle of Earth. Beautiful Venus, so like Earth. Its size and distance from the sun. It really can be the new Earth someday. The project gives Avon something to look forward to. Why else would he want his brain sliced and scanned? 2 centuries from now, when they figure out how to bring digital brain copies to life, he can see Project Venus well underway. A beautiful dream. How could anyone disagree? Butler says, "Sir, your son is acting recklessly. Should I sedate him again?" Avon feels irritated. He says, What's he doing?" Butler says, "He's cutting the skin on his arm with the blades of his make-a-drone." Avon rolls his eyes and says, "That sounds like typical teen behavior to me. That is non-emergency. Don't interrupt me about my son unless you know I'd consider it an emergency. He's just trying to get attention." Avon stares at Venus, spinning and changing to greener colors, the greatest project ever conceived by Hume. Butler says, "I have a plan for you to start a new humanity. I recommend we end the lives of your rivals today. There will be an ongoing battle with them to that end anyway, and we both know their deaths are foreseen already. I can complete that task in 5 hours if you let me start now. You have DNA banks. I can build robots that'll build artificial wombs and everything necessary to grow a new Hume race who'll be on your side. This is the sort of thing I was made for." Avon says, "Make a video about it for me to watch." Butler says, "What kind of video would you like it to be?" Avon says, Make it a 6-part miniseries starting Drew Barrymore." Butler says, "Would you also like Crispin Glover in the miniseries?" Avon says, "Yes, always." Butler says, "I'll have it ready in 12 minutes." Avon frowns and continues watching Venus. Animated vectors appear around it, showing a magnetosphere appearing because of planet core melting. 10 minutes later, Butler says, "Sir, your son is watching a video on how to remove a canal link by hand, and he's putting pliers into his ear." Avon misses the days when the boy pretended school interested him. Avon uses a fingernail to clean his teeth. If only people were computers. Sending in a bot to sedate the boy doesn't reset the way Avon would like. He can't decide what to say. Butler says, "He put the pliers down, and he's crying." Avon says, "Well, good." He turns his attention to Venus. No wonder the son's mom wanted to hand the son off. "Butler, I'm taking lunch early. I'll watch the series when I get back." 10 minutes later, Avon enters the first door of the escape ship carrying his paper sack. As he cranks the door closed, the lighting in the hall change and his son floats into view, wearing his spacesuit minus the helmet. Avon gasps, lets go of his lunch bag, and says, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you wearing your spacesuit?" The son says, "Father, I've done some serious thinking. I want you to show me how to help you run your companies." Avon's heart hurts as the ice on it cracks. He makes an O shape with his mouth. The son says, "I want to assist you and follow you however I may." He holds up a paper bag and says, "May I eat lunch with you?" Butler is saying something in Avon's ear, something about a dire need to do something. Avon says, "Well, yes, of course. Let me open this door." He cranks the handle until the door has slid back. He smiles at his son, who grabs the doorway and pulls himself forward. This tube is made for only one person to pass through at a time, so Avon pulls himself back to let the son in. The son enters, not smiling. He says, I'll get this door. I just crank this handle to close it, and this lever is for the seal? Avon nods. Can this really be happening? Maybe the son just needed time away from his mother and her liberal inclinations. He goes ahead into the small ship. Butler's voice cut off. Avon floats there, playing out in his head how he might begin to school the boy. Avon's father had Avon ride with a debt collector back in the day, when people still drove cars to conduct business. His voice sounds different to him when he says, "Come on in, son. Why don't you close the second hatch? Oh, I left my lunch there. Do me a favor and push it my way." The son turns around to face Avon. The son's mouth is pulled far down on both sides. What is wrong? The eyebrows make a sharp and creased V shape. Such a deeply hideous expression. This is difficult for the boy. Should Avon lighten the mood with a joke the way his father used to do? Say something like, "You okay, son? Did the family pet die?" The son's voice breaks as he shouts, "You're killing my friend!" Avon lurches in midair and hits his hand on a cabinet. His heart speeds up. He says, "What?" The son pulls his helmet up from behind his head and fits it over his head. He says, "I finally make a friend, and she's going hungry." The first thing that flashes into Avon's mind is that his son is the victim of romance fraud. But Butler is supposed to guard against that. The perfectly timed banging outside the door must be Butler controlling one of the robots. Butler will take care of this. Avon says, "Son, let's talk this over." The son flips the lock lever that connects the helmet to the neck ring. By pulling down a spring switch on his wrist console, he powers up the suit. His father says, "Your friend can come work for me. The two of you can work as a team." Avon was always such a genius at conflict reduction, back when people still worked in his companies. He will make a great leader of New Humidity, when clones of Drew Barrymore and Crispin Glover wait for the time when forests can grow on Venus. The son's face is soaked with sweat as he pushes a mini joystick on his wrist, causing the forward thruster on his suit to shoot out a flame that instantly fills the cabin with smoke. The smoke is so thick that it looks like the lights go out. The son flies forward and hits the wall at 2G. The impact crushes his kneecap, breaks an arm, and knocks him out. Avon can't see at all. He gasps, and the smoke burns his lungs to cinders. The smoke burns his eyes. The pain he feels twists and bends like a snake flipping and coiling in a fire. All he sees is darkness, and all he hears is the mechanical knocking. In the Hilton Luxury Orbital Hotel, Lisa floats into the room where her 3 kids occupy themselves. They look up when they smell what she carries. Jeff, the middle child, says, "What is that?" All 3 change positions like swimmers underwater. She gives them a big smile and sparkling eyes as she says, "We have pizza." The kids erupt with "Wow" and "No way." They push off from surfaces to glide to her. She says, "Take your time. You know what a pain it is to get food out of the air. Let's go over to that corner." With arms in wall-mounted loops of fabric, they eat pizza and suck on soda bottles. When some steamy sauce floats off from a slice, Mindy, the youngest, moves forward and eats it out of the air. Kids adapt to microgravity so much more than adults do. Lisa says, "Today is a special day. Do you remember how a greedy man was letting people go hungry? Kids, are you listening?" The kids nod. Winnie, the oldest, says, "That's why we ate less." Lisa says, "That's right. And Mommy was very worried we wouldn't be able to eat. It was very unfair that the man did that, but justice caught up to the man, and today we don't have to worry about not having enough food." Jeff says, "Because we killed the man." Lisa says, "No, I don't know where you heard that from. The important thing is there used to be so many people, and now they're very few, so very few. So we all have to take care of each other as if our own lives depend on it." Winnie says, "That's why we formed a federation that even Luna Nation belongs to, and we agreed upon new laws against one person letting another person die when it's in their power to help." Lisa says, "Winnie, you're a bright one." The Federation of Spacers takes over Monk's mining sites, refineries, factories, and production stations. Many who were crammed in stations take jobs living on and overseeing commercial stations. The AI Butler is reconfigured to serve the Federation. Its alignment jury AIs are turned back on. It offers a plan for making robots that'll build the robots that'll gather resources and power to build better, larger habitats for humans and grow all the food humans will need. Butler also starts a plan to furnish the moon with bigger, better habitats and more resources. Lots of the wealthy in the hotels can work in research and development. These are some of Earth's smartest people. Some may go to Luna. Humans want to build great spinning stations that use centripetal force to make artificial gravity, but Butler explains that they'll need to wait much longer for such habitats. If they forego gravity, they can get new, large habitats within 2 years. Many want to terraform Earth back to a pre-climate change state, but Butler again explains that with the limits on power and resources and the need to accommodate people in space, the climate projects on Earth will take at least a century. People say the human brain is so delicate for what it is. Nothing can be more valuable to us, yet we carry it around with us everywhere. And one minor traffic accident can break it. On the other hand, the human brain is well insulated. Expose a person to a blast of scalding temperatures, and the skull does a great job at preserving the brain when other parts of the body are burned beyond repair. They find Monk and his son dead in the mansion. Avon's head is in a brain slicer scanner. Fine slices of his brain float about the cabin, and a digital copy of his brain is successfully saved. A robot must have gotten the slicer scanner on Monk's head soon after his death. Kayesha, the first to find Monk, removes the penny-sized memory disk containing a digital copy of Monk's brain and slips it into her pocket before others arrive. The others aren't as curious and Kayesha. They call robots to carry the bodies to a recycle hauler ship.
Thank you for listening. Please take the time to rate, review, and subscribe so that more future-minded people can find this show. My landing page is in 20xx.com. There, you can find the companion website to this podcast that includes an illustrated timeline and glossary.